You will need to sit down for this interlude. There are black folding chairs in the salon rooms one floor down from here. Put your device on pause and get one of these chairs. You won't need it right away, but get one now to use later. I will wait for you. Ernest Thiel did not buy this sculpture for his collection. In fact, it is rather new to Thielska Gallery, acquired only in 2004. It is a bronze bust by Johannes Collin, produced in 1915, one of 4 bronzes by the artist at the museum. There is something vague about the way Collin titles his artworks, something that gives the false impression of being neutral and objective. Some of his sculptures are given names that suggest they represent real people, like Marie-Claire or Billy från Lund. But mostly the titles denote identity categories based on sex or age or profession, like gammal kvinna, old woman, flicka, girl, brottare, wrestler, and in the case of this bust, a racialized category, niger, which has been translated as Negro. I have been told that members of the museum staff have found traces of spit on the brass plate that indicates the sculpture's title. Ostensibly, the spit was in protest of the word Niger and the violence of its history, or perhaps for another reason. It is hard to divine intention in the dried crust of leftover saliva. But one thing is clear from the traces of this act. There is a problem here. 1915 is also the year that the Swedish physician Herman Lundborg completed a doctoral dissertation on racial biology at Uppsala University. Lundborg would go on to lead Svenska Sällskapet för Rashygien, the Swedish Society for Eugenics, who organized a traveling ethnographic exhibition some years later, the Folktyputställning of 1919. This exhibition served not only to understand people and difference, but also to classify, to name, to hierarchalize, to reduce people to clear, measurable, nameable categories. By bearing the title Niger, the sculpture feels less like a portrait of a real person and more like a display from one of these ethnographical exhibitions, a portrait of the idea of Niger. It is not known if Collin worked with a live model, although his contemporary, the painter Agnes Kleve, traveled from Sweden to New York City and worked extensively with black models. Vera Nilsson, too, traveled to southern Spain, where she painted many black people. Their impulses may have been problematic, or at least worthy of critical reflection. But we do know that there was at least an encounter between these two artists and real bodies. The artists had to look the models in the eye and acknowledge, I am depicting you. When Collin was sculpting the wax in preparation to cast the mold, was he looking at someone? Was he thinking of someone? Perhaps Collin was enamored of this man. Perhaps they were friends, lovers, travel companions, neighbors. Was he imagining the Negro from direct contact or from dominant local mythology? Is it possible Collin conjured this man from his imagination? Is this representation true to life or true to myth, the myth called Niger? I wish I could ask Collin these questions. I wish I could ask him what his intentions were, who the model was, why he gave the sculpture this particular title. But Colleen already had his chance to speak, and this sculpture is what he said. There is an uncanny, impossible symmetry to his features. His eyes are pupilless, like a zombie. His gaze is opaque, yet undeniably present. His lips are closed. His skin is the color of the bronze's patina, although so too is the skin of all the bronze figures Colleen sculpted. Are we supposed to understand Marie Claire and Billy Fronlund as being white-skinned, despite their bronze complexions? Is that why Colleen named the artwork Niger? To make it clear to the spectator that, in this case, the bronze should not be mistaken for white skin. Can we decolonize our gaze, our encounters with history? How can we peel back the layers of ideology and misinformation that contaminate our spectatorship? It is easy to look at this sculpture, this title, these problems, and to think, this is all long ago. This is 100 years ago. Things are different now. It is true. Things are different now. But the story that Colleen's Negro is a part of, is it over? How did it end? Take a moment to think about the machinations of race in the social and political arena of today. Think of a situation happening right now in Sweden, or in Europe, or in your country, in which lines are being drawn based on race, on national identity, about us and them. What role does this sculpture play in that story? How is it part of the same overarching narrative 100 years later? Enough. Enough chatter. Can't he speak for himself? If we could offer him subjectivity now, 100 years too late, what would he say? Place your chair in front of the bust. If you don't have a chair, you can kneel or crouch down. Find a way to bring your gaze to the exact level as his, so you are looking directly at each other. Now stop being a spectator. Stop observing and surveying and considering this image. Stop asking questions about Colleen's intentions, about who this man was, about what he should be called. Instead, offer yourself over to his gaze. Let him be the subject now. Become the object. He might not look back at you. With his pupilless eyes, drained of subjectivity, he might choose to look past you, to look through you, to look beyond your questions and musings and fears. Do not try to make sense of his faraway, inscrutable gaze. It is not up to you. It is up to him. Sit in the fire of these questions. Sit in the opacity of his gaze. Offer yourself to him.